What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Before Week 6 predictions start later today, I gotta tell you guys who I believe, as of right now, are making the college football playoffs, as well as who are teams that are going to get spots in New Year's 6 bowl games. There are a couple changes here to my predictions from last week, and we're going to dive into all of that here in this video. Hopefully I don't ramble on too much, but before we talk about my college football playoff bracket and my New Year's 6 bowl game predictions, I got a little business I got to take care of first. I just want to thank you guys so much for the support the channel has seen as of late. If you guys want to continue to show your support this college football season, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. That's the biggest way you can help support this channel, but there are other ways you can do so. Hey, you guys are doing one of them right now just by watching this video, and you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, really anything else you guys are willing and are able to do to help me support this channel does mean a lot to me. Again, any way you guys support this channel and help get it out there, it really does mean a lot. So, enough of the business out of the way. Without further ado, let's dive on into who I have making the college football playoff and New Year's 6 bowl games. Of course, you see the lovely playoff bracket on screen. That means we are going to start with the college football playoff bracket, and we do have a slight change. There is a new number 1 team, just as there was a new number 1 team in my top 25 poll. That same team is taking over the number 1 spot here in my college football playoff bracket, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. I've said it in a couple videos now. I do not believe we truly have an elite team, or if you don't want to go that far, you can say that no team looks untouchable this year, right? Every team has bled. Every team has a weakness. But what I saw from Michigan last week and the way that J.J. McCarthy and the offensive line have really started to step up their play really impressed me. Michigan also has one of the best defenses in the entire country, if not the best defense in the entire country. Michigan looks really good, and I think they are right now the closest team to that elite level status. Now, Michigan still has some weaknesses. They've still bled. Again, they struggled at times during some games in their non-conference schedule. However, now that Jim Harbaugh is back on the sideline, this team has a ton of games to ramp up for before you get an interesting road game against Michigan State, and then you have to play Penn State and Ohio State in the month of November. It'll be an interesting season to watch for the Michigan Wolverines. They will elect to play in the Rose Bowl game as their playoff semifinal. Number 2 is the number 2 team I have in my top 25 poll right now, and it is the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, I'm still confident that Georgia should be able to run through their schedule, should be able to win the SEC, and should be able to get a spot in the college football playoff. However, Georgia has shown a lot more weaknesses than I think a lot of us thought coming into the season. First of all, we got to talk about the offense, right? The offense has definitely taken a step back from where it has been. I know there are some people that are starting to compare whether or not Carson Beck is really better than Stetson Bennett. Don't know why the name slipped my mind there for a second, but comparisons are starting to fly there. This is, in my opinion, not as good of a running back room as Georgia's had in the past. Now, you still got the best tight end in the country in Brock Bowers, and the defense is, for the most part, still doing Georgia defense things. Maybe you'd like to see them get a little bit more pressure to the quarterback, generate some more sacks. But Georgia, we really saw bleed in that game against Auburn. That dropped them down to number 2 for me. However, looking at the rest of their schedule, if they can get through Atlanta, they can win the SEC championship, and even they may not even have to win that. If they can get through the rest of their schedule unscathed, you have Kentucky coming up this week, Tennessee later on in the year. I believe there's a game against Ole Miss on that schedule as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Georgia Bulldog and or Ole Miss Rebel fans, but I'm really liking the way that Georgia is sort of piecing things together, although, again, you still got some work to do. Still believe they'll get a spot in the college football playoff. The All-State Sugar Bowl is left, and I don't think Georgia will mind too much in playing in that bowl game either. And then number 3 and 4 have stayed the same for me. Texas is still sitting here at number 3, although, again, you could easily vault Texas to that number 2 spot. Really just sort of depends there on who wears their home and who wears their away jerseys, but I do believe that as of right now, it will be Georgia, Texas in the college football playoff semifinal. Texas, yes, Kansas did not have Jalen Daniels starting at quarterback for them in that game. But Texas has, again, really impressed me by the fact that that defensive front playing some really good ball. They're not playing down to their level of competition. And yes, it was a struggle there in the first half against Kansas. A lot of missed opportunities, a lot of field goals when you should have come away with touchdowns. But when I take a look at this Texas team in and out. Yes, they're still susceptible to lose a game here on the schedule. One of those games coming up here in the Red River rivalry. But what I've seen from Texas so far has really, really impressed me. It's got them sitting in the college football playoff bracket. And then a team that I was really high on at the beginning of the year, I've had in my playoff bracket throughout the entirety of this college football season. Although maybe they're starting to bow their way out here. It's the Florida State Seminoles. Now, the Seminoles are a very, very interesting team, right? They played with their hair on fire the second half against LSU. They played really, really good ball. And for the most part this year, they also had some really nice moments there against Clemson where they were really able to play really good, sound football. And Florida State is a team that does have some easier games coming up, but it also does get harder, right? Duke is there on that schedule. A couple other tougher games are left on the schedule for Florida State. Probably going to be favored in every game they play, but they've seemed susceptible, right? They haven't really seemed like the Florida State we saw in the game against LSU since the game against LSU. I've said it multiple times on this channel. That second half against LSU, specifically that fourth quarter, is the best half of football, the best quarter of football that they have played so far this season, and that cannot be the case if you want to be a true college football playoff contender. You got to continue to grow. You got to continue to move forward. Florida State, as of right now, still in that playoff bracket, but man, Florida State absolutely, if they drop a game or two, maybe they end up bowing out of my bracket. Now, the Pac-12, and I've said this in previous videos, has a very likely possibility of getting a team in. There are so many talented teams across the Pac-12 conference. Most notably, you got USC, you got Oregon, you got Washington there as well. All those teams have been very, very impressive. However, the Pac-12 has to prove to me that it will not cannibalize itself. It will not eat itself alive. And until I see that, I'm not going to have a Pac-12 team in my college football playoff bracket. Although if I were to have one, probably would end up being the Washington Huskies or the USC Trojans there in my playoff bracket. But this is the playoff bracket I'm going with as of right now. I think if you were to end the season right now, these are the four teams that you would have to put in there based on the full body of work and everything like that. Do believe that Michigan would still end up beating Florida State, and I think in a very close game, Georgia would be able to beat Texas, but I think Michigan really sort of validated themselves as of right now as the front runner to go win the national championship. I've been saying it all season long. I even said it in the preseason. Michigan was my preseason pick to go win the national championship, and again, right now, they're probably the closest team to that elite level status that we have seen so far this season. Although, again, you can say, well, Michigan hasn't really been tested yet. And while that may be true, there are some interesting games coming up on the Michigan schedule here as they get deeper into Big Ten play. And the month of November is going to be huge for them. But Michigan, still as of right now, my pick to win the college football playoff national championship. All right, let's go ahead and dive on into the rest of the New Year's Six bowl game predictions. The Cotton Bowl here has not changed. Still got the USC Trojans, still got the Penn State Nittany Lions, although both of these teams, real contenders to slot into the college football playoff, guys. That's what's so amazing about this year. The playoff bracket doesn't really feel set in stone, and it's not the same 3 or 4 teams that you've really expected to be towards the top, right? USC, Penn State, they are right there, along with the 4 teams that I've already mentioned previously that are already up in my college football playoff bracket. But what's interesting to me about this USC team, we know, or I guess not interesting, but concerning, we know what the offense is. That defense has got to start lacing up its cleats and putting their foot in the ground. That's a defense that's really got to step up, really got to play some big minutes late, especially because of how backloaded this USC schedule really is. And then for the Penn State Nittany Lions, Drew Aller is legit. This defense is legit. You guys know the storylines with Penn State, but we really saw them start to bleed and struggle with a Northwestern team last week that, albeit probably a lot better than some people give them credit for, including myself at the beginning of this season. But man, that's a team that Penn State should have handled, and they ended up winning by quite a lot. But I believe the score was 10-10, 17-10, something like that into halftime. Penn State's got a lot of interesting, tougher games coming up on their schedule as well. Diving into the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Whoa! One brand new team in here and one team that just ended up flipping sides here. We do have the Oregon Ducks still in a college or still in a New Year's Six bowl game spot. Really like the way that the Ducks have played, and they're kind of one of the teams too. You could kind of group them in with Michigan. That maybe the Ducks are a team that haven't really bled as much as some others so far this year. Although they did have a struggle in that game against Texas Tech, and then did struggle for a quarter there against a very, very bad Stanford team. However, I still believe Oregon at the end of the season and as of right now has the body of work. They've been very, very impressive. Again, they ended up manhandling Stanford by 36, same score that they ended up beating Colorado by. Still believe they belong in the New Year's Six bowl game. And how about the Oklahoma Sooners? We're going to talk about the Sooners later today when we preview the Red River rivalry, but the Oklahoma Sooners are not the team from last year. Dillon Gabriel is dangerous. He's probably at his best that he's ever been at. This is an Oklahoma defense. Hey, you remember Brent Venables, right? Defensive coordinator at Clemson. Yeah, the defensive-minded Brent Venables, the defensive master classes that he would put on, they're starting to show up here with the Oklahoma Sooners. They're playing some really, really good defensive football right now. That's my Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl matchup. My Capital One Orange Bowl has not changed. Still got the Ohio State Buckeyes fresh off of a bye week, fresh off of a monster win against Notre Dame. They got the undefeated Maryland Terrapins this week. Should be an interesting test for them, but I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how this Buckeye team grows as the season progresses from this point on. And then still what I believe to be the second best team in the ACC, the North Carolina Tar Heels, I have here making the Capital One Orange Bowl, led by Drake May. He's got a lot of talented players around him. And while the defense, yes, still has to round into form, right? It's a defense that I feel like definitely has improved from last year. A lot of interesting games for North Carolina coming up on the schedule. Still believe you have Miami. You still have to play Duke. Hopefully Riley Leonard can get back sooner than a lot of people expect. But taking a look at this North Carolina team, still believe they're in a very good position to, if Florida State ends up making the college football playoff, get into a New Year's Six bowl game again. If I were to have another team besides Florida State in there, they would be dropping down here to the Capital One Orange Bowl to play the Ohio State Buckeyes, which either way, still think very fascinating, very interesting game. And then my Verbo Fiesta Bowl has not changed as well. Fresno State, yes, they had their quarrels, had their struggles with a Nevada team that is one of 4 FBS teams that is still yet to register a win. But when I take a look at the Fresno State Bulldogs, they're playing some really, really good football right now. And while it's very close between teams like Tulane and Air Force and maybe some other teams that you could throw out in the group of 5 ranks, still believe Fresno State has that mark there as the #1 group of 5 team. And then, of course, you guys knew Washington was going to be in the New Year's Six bowl game. This prediction here did not change from last week, but the Washington Huskies probably look like one of the most dangerous teams in the entire country. Now, we did see Washington start to bleed last week as well, though. Michael Penix did not light the world on fire with his performance last week, and this is a Washington defense that really struggled with Arizona's backup quarterback, as Jaden DeLora did not play, and this is the Washington offense that again, really struggled in that road environment. Michael Penix did not light the world on fire, and it was a really big struggle at times for Washington. Now, I don't think the game was ever in doubt. I think the game was always in hand. But again, this just goes to my point that we've seen every team bleed. And again, the college football playoff field, put really any 4 teams you want in there that you feel like have a realistic shot of making it. It's probably a realistic scenario at the end of the line. Washington's one of those teams. Right now, I got them sitting in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. We'll take one more look at my college football playoff bracket while I round out this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please, anything you can help support the channel means a lot. Like, comment, subscribe, share my videos, watch my videos. Hey, anything you guys are willing and able to do helps me out a ton. Still got Michigan winning the national title. We'll dive into Week 6 predictions here later on today. Remember to play hard with Tailgate Harder. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.